What is happening, people? Welcome back to the Scarfey Spurs Talk Podcast. In this episode, we're going to be dissecting that disappointing loss against Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park, our fourth loss in the season, only 9 games in as well. But to introduce today's panel to help me get through this in what could be a therapy session, Seb, welcome back. How you doing? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, good start to the show. Yeah, thanks for having me back on, mate.
No, thank you very much for coming on. It's great to have you on. Billie T, long time no see, just on Holly's show before with you. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm actually a bit better now. We just spoke about it for a little bit, but yeah, as I was saying on that show, it's 7 o'clock or between 7 and 8 o'clock, and it's pitch black outside, and that's how I feel mentally as well. It's just, yeah, what a depressing viewing experience yesterday was for everyone, except for Henry, of course.
Yeah, of course. So we'll go on to introducing Henry. So no, thank you very much for coming on, Billy. Sorry to put you through it for the second time. Travis, welcome back onto the show. Long time no see. How you been doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you, mate. Yeah, good to be back on the show as always. It has been a good fair while, so it's always good to get back on the show and obviously talking about all things Tottenham. Hopefully, a few positive points this podcast, but yeah, we shall see.
Yeah, we'll see about that now. We try and be balanced as always. See both sides of the argument. So thank you very much. His debut. Welcome, Henry, Crystal Palace fan and journalist. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Harry. Thanks for having me. Nice to meet all of you. And I'm going to try not to be too smug. Considering our league position, I don't think I can be. But yeah, I'm happy to be here.
No, it's great to have you on, despite the results. So no, thank you very much for coming on. Before we get going, that's a shout out to both our sponsors, the Kitman and Secureit VPN. But we'll crack straight into it. I want to go back though before the game and talk about the lineup. So for anyone who didn't see it, our starting lineup was Vicario, Porro, Romero, who got the captain's armband on the day, Van der Ven, Udogie, the midfielder Basuma, Maddison, and Kulusevski, Johnson, Solanke, and more as well in that attack. Our substitutes were Fraser Forster, Radu Dragusin, Ben Davis, Archie Gray, Rodrigo Bentancur, Lucas Bergevall, Papa Mate Sarr, Timo Werner, and Richarlison. So, 17-year-old academy product Mikey Moore come in at left wing in place of Timo Werner. That's our only change from our last league outing against West Ham. That equates to 8 changes from the Europa League win over AZ Alkmaar on Thursday night, with Moore, Maddison, and Udogie all retaining their place in the starting 11. As expected, Captain Son was sidelined through injury, and as I said, Romero did have the armband as well. Seb, was there any surprises in there for you?
No, and I think it's probably the most excited I've seen Spurs fans be about a lineup in a while, to be honest, with Mikey Moore coming in. I think, obviously, hindsight is a wonderful thing. Looking back on it, might have made a few changes in that midfield in terms of dealing with that physical challenge that Palace posed us. But, yeah, I was really, really excited about Mikey Moore coming in. Thought that was the right decision, and yeah, I was pretty buzzing before the game, to be honest.
Yeah, okay, that's good. It's good to hear. Obviously, it didn't go very well, did it? But I was like you at the time. I thought, that seemed to me anyway like a good lineup. Billy, what were your thoughts on the lineup when it came out? Anything you would have done differently at the time? And it's so easy to say now.
Nope, I was buzzing. I was absolutely buzzing. I was, as Seb said, it's the most excited I've been about game for a long time just because of Mikey Moore. I think it's difficult, for people that aren't Spurs fans, it's difficult to just sort of describe that kind of feeling, which is why everyone was getting excited. But Mikey, for those, obviously, for maybe the Henry's benefit and things, like he's such a special talent that to actually see him start a game in the Premier League at 17 years old, we've all been calling for it since he started coming on in the last few games when he was 16 last season, and it's finally here. And the way that it turned out obviously wasn't great in hindsight, but before the game I was absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, no, so was I. Mikey Moore, a generational talent, I think it'd be fair to say, and it's great to see him in action Thursday night. Travis, what are your thoughts on the lineup? Anything you would have done differently?
Yeah, again, I have to agree with what's been said. I was absolutely buzzing to see Mikey Moore. I think he's going to be something special to come. I think, he's a 17-year-old. I think he conducts and composes himself so professionally, and I think he's got a very good head on his shoulder. I think, yeah, absolutely, he should be chosen over Timo Werner at the moment, which pains me because, I had such high hopes for Timo Werner when he came to Spurs. I really, really did, and it breaks my heart knowing he's probably not going to make it through into next season as a fully signed player. The only thing I might have changed is I would have started Rodrigo Bentancur over Basuma. I think you have to start Bentancur. I don't know if he's got a knock at the moment, but I think you have to start him every single game because of just who he is and he pulls the strings. I don't think Basuma's a bad player. I think he's done really, really well the start of this season and done really well the end of last season. I don't think he's a bad player at all, but I think Bentancur has to start over Basuma because, as I say, he just pulls the strings, and I think he's just that slightly more gifted than what Basuma is. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. It's really interesting. I know you're a big fan of Bentancur, so no, it's good to hear, Travis. Thank you for that. Henry, moving on to the Crystal Palace lineup. You had Wharton and Sarr come back into the side. Nketiah making way on the bench. Again, same kind of question for you. Is there anything you would have done differently? Any surprises in there? Maybe to see Nketiah not in there?
I think it's a good question. I think Palace have been, for people that have watched a lot of Palace this season, there's been a massive lack of kind of that battling and just a bit of passion really across the whole squad really. In games we saw against Forest on Monday night, it was just really, really poor. I think the lineup was good. I think Wharton's really interesting. You know, the club are at the minute refusing to put him into groin surgery because they value him so highly for a squad. I thought he looked back to how he did last season. I think that Lerma playing was a bit of a risk. He's had a knock, got injured when he was playing with Colombia, so maybe Will Hughes starting. Obviously, Lerma ended up going off pretty early on and Hughes coming in. But I think overall, switching to more of a wide-based formation instead of the two up front. Mateta and Nketiah haven't worked up front. It's been trialled. It hasn't worked. We might give it another go on Wednesday in the Cup, but for now, I think most Palace fans were pretty happy with the lineup.
Okay, no, that's good to hear. No, we'll stay with you, Henry, because you did mention it there. Lerma did come off injured and was replaced by Will Hughes quite early on, 22nd minute to be exact. Has injuries been an issue for Palace this season? Maybe why you haven't got the results that your performances deserve?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't put it completely down to injuries. I think we've been very poor in front of goal consistently throughout the season, very poor in the final third. I think that in terms of injuries, our central midfield is our big problem. You've got Chet Doucouré, who looked stellar when he had that first proper run of fixtures and has been struggling with injuries since he went off away to Luton last season. Wharton's obviously struggling. You've got Lerma that's struggling. Munoz, who played really well in the end, was actually supposedly meant to be out for 5 weeks and has miraculously started playing again, which is the mind boggles at how that works. Whether he's still got a knock, you just don't know. But I think injuries wise, we haven't been too unlucky.
Don't know what that is. Henry, I think you've got a small technical issue. So apologies about that. We'll come back to Henry in a little bit. It's a little bit of feedback. I wonder what was going on there. I thought it was my head.
I thought it was mine. Jesus Christ.
Frightened me a little bit.
That's why I get rid of opposition fans.
Oh dear. It wouldn't be a normal show, would it, without a technical issue? But I haven't quite had that before.
You sound like JCB in his room.
I thought it's my computer. Jesus.
Wow, crikey. Heart's definitely working after that one. We will move on to the only goal of the game. It did sadly go to Crystal Palace in the 31st minute through Mateta. Billy, it was poor defensively from Spurs, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It's a almost carbon copy of the West Ham goal. We conceded that goal too many times. You know it's happening. We can't stop a cross from coming in. We can't deal with a cross. We can't get to the man. And it happened again. A couple of players, I think maybe particularly, obviously Mickey van der Ven slipped, which I don't think it's just unlucky, but I'm a bit worried about Porro and Romero defensively this season, to be honest. I think Porro was quite poor for this goal, Romero not great either, and I think a lot of our goals this season that we've conceded, you could maybe look at Romero. He's involved in a lot of them, ball watching quite often, and for someone who is without doubt a world-class defender, he's not really been a world-class defender for us this season, I don't think.
Yeah, no, definitely. A lot of people have mentioned that. I don't think he's been the start of the season that he would have wanted for sure. Seb, are you concerned that the same type of goal is conceded? The ball comes into the box, it isn't dealt with, and poor passing out from the back?
Yeah, it was definitely a poor goal to concede. I echo what Billy said really about Romero and Porro. But also, I think with that goal, it was just a bit of an individual, brilliance from Eze as well. That little flick with his heel, I think Romero, you'd expect him to shoot there or something like that. But I mean, that flick was absolutely disgusting to Mateta. So I do think you've got to give him some credit for that as well. I think, my problems came more after that and how he responded to the goal. And I think, you're going to concede goals sometimes that just do have that little moment in them. And I think that was the case with Eze. But yeah, it was poor from Van der Ven, poor slip from him. I think he could have, stepped onto the ball a little bit more, taken a touch, been a bit more positive with that instead of sort of panicking and then ended up slipping. But yeah, I think same as what Billy said, really poor from Romero, poor from Porro, but also brilliance from Eze, I think.
Absolutely.
I think it's for me as well. Like, it was to concede a poor goal like that is frustrating it's particularly frustrating if you're dominating the game. But it's no less than Palace deserved. They deserve to go ahead. Like it wasn't like it's a poor goal and you've just conceded it, but it was coming and it was continued to come straight after the goal. We just didn't have an answer for them at all on Sunday. No answers whatsoever.
No, we certainly didn't. I think you put that nicely. So thank you to both Seb and Billy. Travis, who's at fault here from a Spurs point of view defensively? I think that Billy's right. You have to also give credit to Palace and Eze. That was a really nice goal, but from a Spurs point of view, it's poor, isn't it?
Well, it's got to come from the centre backs really, and I think we just don't put any oomph into our challenges. I think we're just too. I know Romero obviously used to be a bit of a liability with throwing himself in there, but I don't know. Like our back four is just so frustrating because we've got two of the best centre backs in the world. With Romero and Mickey van der Ven. But yeah, I think Vicario. I think I could sit here and blame him because I think he's just too flappy. I'm going off the question here a bit, Harry, but I think Fraser Forster played absolutely brilliant against AZ midweek. But I don't know. I just think our defence is it's a myth, really. Our defence, I think. I just think we just haven't got confidence at times to just smash the ball and just get rid of it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a recurring goal, that the type of goal that we're trying to concede. We will try with you again, Henry, and see if the technical issue's gone. So I will come to you, Henry, and ask what you thought of that goal from a Palace point of view. Mateta needed that goal as well, didn't he?
Yeah, can you hear me okay now?
All good, loud and clear?
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if my headphones are playing up. Yeah, Mateta, it's a great point you say with Mateta. Obviously, we saw that purple patch, I'm going to call it, at the end of last season where he became incredible and clinical. And it was almost a goal back to that kind of breath where he's taken the ball. It's a brilliant touch from Eze. He's got not much time to think and he's just put his foot through it. And it's a really good finish. I think throughout the rest of the game, really struggled in front of goal. I think, it would be fair to say that we, in the second half especially, could have scored another two, maybe more than that. But, it comes down to missed chances and missed opportunities and poor decisions in front of goal. I think, Eze had that chance that he scuffed. I think he had a volley in the first half that he kind of shanked a bit over the bar. Chalobah, even though he was offside, I think we just lack that clinical edge. And I think that has been something that's really hindered us this season. But for your striker to get a goal and get the confidence going, and you saw how happy he was and motivated, and you would have seen as well, Mateta's a bit of a cheerleader in some senses. He gets the crowd going and winds the opposition up. And I think if we can get him back to his best, that could then trickle down through the rest of the team and see us pushing on.
Okay, that's really interesting to hear. I thought Eze had done really well for that goal. But next, I want to get the thoughts. I want to listen to what Jamie O'Hara said on Sky Sports about the goal that Spurs conceded. I've just got a little clip here of him, what he had to say, because I think it's really interesting.
Play out from the back and don't really have a way of how they're actually going to get out of an area. They just play and see what's on. And it goes back to Vicario, and Vicario just ends up just chipping one to Van der Ven. Van der Ven's slow, but it's not a great ball. It's laboured. And Crystal Palace are waiting for that moment. If you're going to play out from the back, it's got to be fizzed, quick, two-touch. Move it sharp. And Spurs do it so slow all the time. And they're chipping a ball across the edge of the box. That just ball's never on. And, they nick it, they cross it in. Eze, little flick to Mateta, 1-0. And then you're chasing the game. And they were poor, Spurs, today.
Seb, I want to get your thoughts on that Jamie O'Hara said. He's visibly not happy. He did continue ranting after about how Ange Postecoglou got it wrong. Do you think he's right in terms of the way that we conceded that goal?
Yeah, for that specific example, he definitely is. I mean, yeah, I think I don't really necessarily agree with him about as an overall thing that we've got no philosophy playing out from the back. I think that's really, really unfair on us, to be honest. I think there's been plenty of times this season where we scored brilliant goals or we played out well from the back. It's just one of those things where when you do play that sort of style, that sort of system, you are going to get caught sometimes. I think you've got to give credit to Palace as well. I thought Palace's press was excellent. Clearly, Glasner identified sort of points where they wanted to press and they wanted to go. And Mickey van der Ven, in that moment, he got caught by Munoz on the ball. I think people are making it a bit too big of a deal about the Romero pass. I thought it was really Mickey van der Ven who sort of didn't know whether to step onto it, didn't know whether to let the ball bounce, and eventually ended up slipping. I just think it's one of those things that it happens sometimes. It was an unfortunate slip. 9 times out of 10, Van der Ven just clears that up the pitch, and I think we escaped the danger there. But yeah, I think Jamie O'Hara he tends to go quite strong, doesn't he? So I think saying we've got absolutely no star playing out from the back and that we constantly get caught, I don't think that's really that fair on Ange and the team, to be honest with you. I don't think that's... Yeah,
I think it's nicely put, Seb. I agree with you. I think he's reactionary, definitely O'Hara with some things. I think this example, though, as you say, he's right. I do think we have a style of playing out for the back, and when we get it right, boy, do we get it right. I think it's really good and can transition quickly from defence to attack. And at the start of the season, I was like, start last season, start this season, go, oh my goodness, this is awful. But we're actually really good at it. And this situation was a poor goal to concede. I think it's poor ball initially actually from Vicario to Van der Ven. I think Van der Ven gets it wrong. As well, I think there's more that could have been done after that from, in particular, Porro to prevent that goal. It's just a comedy of errors, really, but you've got to give credit to Palace. Henry, I'm really interested to get your thoughts as an outsider, as a Palace fan, non-Spurs fan, if you like, on what O'Hara said, and based on what you saw in this game, maybe you've seen of Spurs so far in the Ange Postecoglou era, if you like. Do you think we have a problem with the way we play out from the back? Is it an issue?
I think that's a great question, because I think it's really easy to point at teams playing out from the back, because a lot of teams do it now. It's very easy to point at teams doing that. And the odd occasion that there is an error, as there was yesterday, that's when people are like, oh, it doesn't work. They're really bad at it. It's not good enough. But I think, like you've mentioned, you've scored lots of good goals playing out from the back. I watch a lot of football, so I have watched a lot of Spurs this season, and I've seen multiple times that works, For Palace, I've seen us play out from the back and concede really poor goals. I've also seen us play out from the back, move it up the pitch, fast counter-attacks and score. It comes with the risk of playing that type of football. I think you've all hit the nail on the head where you're saying, Van der Ven's got to do better. For me, once he's lost the ball initially, I'm not sure why he's dropping back. It's almost like he's dropped back and hoped to block the cross, but he's about 10 yards from the ball. Very unlikely that that's going to get hit at him. I think that, overall, there were times I thought the one thing, maybe your goal kicks at times when you're boxed in. I think there was an opportunity for Palace in the second half where you're set up for the goal kick and there's 4 Palace players around the box. I think maybe it comes to decision making. Maybe at that point you should go long, or maybe look for some of the pace you've got out wide. I think that Brennan Johnson really threatened, and the one time I can only remember 1 or 2 times where the ball was played long diagonally to Brennan Johnson, and that's when, as a Palace fan, I kind of sat up and was like, oh, this could be dangerous. I think you didn't utilise that. So I think it might just be more down to decision making, but it's a mistake. Mistakes happen, it's football. So I think that Jamie O'Hara's comments are maybe a little bit dramatic.
Surely not, Jamie O'Hara. No, thank you very much for that, Henry. Travis, it was a half-time 1-0 Palace. Obviously, we know it did remain like that, but focusing on that first half, we weren't very good in that half at all, were we?
Absolutely abysmal. And I think Henry's just made some really good points here about what way the goalkeeper kicks the ball. And I think we do faff around at the back a lot. I mean, I don't know how Mickey van der Ven can go from being roadrunner one week against Man United to then not knowing where to put the ball. As I say, it's just very frustrating with the way we play at the back. And I think Vicario, I think his decision making, I think he knows how to make a decision, but he doesn't know how to physically act upon it, where to put the ball or who to pass it to or how far to kick it up the field. And I think we do just faff around at the back too much. And it's just, I don't know where we go with that, really. I just think... Pardon?
Do you think he's a problem, Vicario, in general? I mean, you mentioned him a couple of times. Do you think he's
I don't want to say it's a problem because he's not. Obviously, we signed Vicario for whatever reason, but I think he's got a bit of a screw loose anyway. But I think his actual pinpoint decision making of where to put the ball is just concerning. I mean, Fraser Forster is our number 2 goalkeeper. He's I can't remember the last time I saw Fraser Forster play, but he's so much more composed. I don't know if that's because of how many more games he's played or his experience of being a goalkeeper. I don't know, but I felt so much more relaxed watching. Granted, we did play AZ, who again did play quite well against us, but his composure is so much more better than Vicario's. And don't get me wrong, Vicario has made some absolutely astonishing saves, and he's got us out a lot of trouble sometimes. But I think his decision making is just very concerning at times. And we're losing against teams like Palace who absolutely needed that win, and then they're absolutely licking their lips with us because we are the sort of team that can be beat. When they know that we're playing bad. So I just think Vicario is at fault a lot. And I just think the defence is just it just sings different. They don't sing off the same hymn sheet every single game, and I think that's the problem.
Okay, no, that's interesting to hear. I haven't had someone mention that to me before, actually, about Vicario. So it's just interesting to get your thoughts on that.
I think it's just his composure, Harry. I think that and his thought process we've had where he's kicking the ball is just my only concern.
Yeah, no, people in the chat as well agree with you. Massive shout out to Fraser Forster, though, for his performance against AZ Alkmaar. Hasn't got a lot of appreciation for it. A clean sheet to go with it. I know, obviously, maybe the level of opposition, but for a number 2, hasn't played for a while, I thought done really well. It's a good shot stopping and just done really well. But, the key part of that defence and really deserved the clean sheet. So that's real credit to him. He used his experience wisely. We will get back on topic, though, because the 61st minute, we saw a triple substitution from Ange Postecoglou. Off went Mikey Moore, Maddison and Kulusevski, and on came Pape Matar, Richarlison and Timo Werner. Billy, how do you think that Mikey Moore done in this game? And was it the wrong decision to start him? Looking back, obviously he played the full 90 minutes, just a few days before against AZ Alkmaar.
No, it was a wrong decision starting. Everyone was calling for it. Every single person was calling for it. So I think in hindsight, you could say it didn't turn out great, but I think it'd be unfair to lay that on Ange when every single fan was calling for it in the first place. So I think it was the right decision at the time. It just didn't work out very well. The alternative being starting, I don't think would have worked out particularly any better, really, particularly with his confidence issues. So no, I don't think it was the wrong choice. I thought it was interesting that he took off those 3 players because those are easily our 3 most creative players. And once they went off, it's cutting up. Not that we were particularly creative in the first place. It was an absolutely horrendous day at the but no creativity on that pitch then after that, and that further adds to the struggle. I think you always have to have one of Maddison or Kulusevski playing for us because they're our most creative players. Mikey Moore can also be really creative as well. But I can understand the decision to take him off because he did play on Thursday as well. I wouldn't have taken off Maddison and Kulusevski. I would have taken off one of them, probably Maddison, because they're the heartbeat of our team creatively.
Yeah, definitely.
Having said that, though, this is the first game this season where I don't remember a team stifling both of them as well as Palace did. I think that's the first time that's happened this season.
Can I just ask, do you think that Ange was forced into making that Kulusevski change, though? Because obviously he was booked, and he put in a couple of fouls, and the Palace fans were getting very frustrated that he hadn't been shown a second yellow card. Whether he should have or not is a completely different question. But for me, it felt like one of those substitutes where it was purely based on the fact that it looked like he could get himself sent off.
Possibly, but I think also to compare the way he's been playing this season, this was his first bad game in a long time. Like he's been so good. This is the first time that a midfielder has been able to deal with him. Palace are the first team that have dealt with him for a good stretch of games now. So I think that's definitely a consideration as well. But he was also just completely ineffective, which has been for a long time because he's our best player by a very long way this season. No,
thank you very much, Billy. Good question as well, Henry. I think that's important to bear in mind. Forgot he's on a yellow card, and you're right. It was a couple of times that he was, I won't say lucky necessarily to be sent off. There's a couple of times that the referee had to speak to Kulusevski. Seb, Billy mentions Maddison there. Was it wrong decision to start him? Again, played the full game. Well, not the full game. Played a large chunk of the game in the week against AZ. Well, that win, and I thought he was good in that. But yeah, we saw, didn't we, against West Ham that he didn't really work that midfield balance. So should he have started Maddison? Looking back on it.
Oh yeah, I think Maddison was our best player on Thursday night against AZ, so I think he did deserve that start. I think it was right to start him, and I think up to the point where it wasn't working, I think another half-time change maybe could have been good. I thought Brennan Johnson was getting no real joy on the right-hand side. I didn't think, obviously, Mikey Moore was getting no joy on the left-hand side as well, but I agree with Billy on the substitutions. That was the real thing that caused an issue for me, taking off all of our creative players when Johnson and Werner on either wing with two strikers up top as well. We had no real route to get them the ball. I know Werner put in a couple of half-decent balls, but yeah, that did confuse me. I think maybe in hindsight, going away to these grounds where obviously Crystal Palace are always going to try and impose themselves a bit more physically against us when obviously we probably have the superior squad technically. I think in that midfield, maybe having somebody like a Sarr in there, like he proved against West Ham, can be really, really valuable because obviously he gives us that running, that intensity in midfield, someone to help Bissouma as well. I probably personally would have started Bentancur. I agree with what Travis said. I think Bentancur in a game like that, I think especially in the first phase of possession, like so useful because of how good he is on the ball. So yeah, maybe in hindsight, Maddison could not have played, or maybe, I mean, you can never drop Kulusevski, the form he's in at the minute. But yeah, I think it's been interesting going forward what Ange actually does in these away games when we play these sides on slightly smaller pitches, a bit more physical, and what he goes with in the midfield. Because I think especially playing out from the back in that first phase, I do think we struggle a bit more with that system.
Yeah, I'm with you. Maybe you tighten up a little bit. Yeah, go.
Can I ask Henry? Can I ask Henry a question as well? So I said that's the first time this season where we've not been able to cope with the side in the Premier League, especially. Dominated every game so far, and this game we had no answers for Palace's press and got overrun midfield completely. That's happened to us for a couple of halves this season, but it's not happened to us for a full game. Was that a typical Palace midfield performance this season? Because your results have not shown that, or was this like a big improvement on what's come before? Was it because Wharton was back, or how this in particular so effective for Palace?
I think that's a great question. I think it's a typical Palace performance of last season towards the back end of the season under Glasner. I think the frustration for Palace is that we haven't seen that same performance. We haven't seen that same, it's almost like the same passion and the same care. It was brilliant to see, players, Maxence Lacroix, I thought was superb. It was brilliant to see him winning the ball and just punch in the air and celebrate with the fans. And we've really lacked that sort of work rate and that dogged determination that you need to win Premier League games. I think I'll go back to Forest away. I was at the game and the entire away end's getting fed up because Forest are just popping the ball around and nobody's pressing. I think that's Glasner's really shot a rocket up them, and the players came out after the game and said, that Glasner and his staff were saying that when times get tough, you need to just be brave and you need to go for it. And I think in that sense, what our show of bravery was more so just going back to what we did last season. We have a good squad. I think on paper we should be, doing what the likes of Forest and Brighton are doing. I think, it's very frustrating that once again we're in a position where we haven't won for 8 games, and then, hopefully this can be the turning point. But I think, to properly answer your question, not at all a performance that we've been used to this season. A performance that we should be used to, and that I think from now on we've really set the standard.
So it's just typical that it came against us, really, then.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Good old Spurs. No, thank you very much. And Henry, we'll stay with you, actually, because in the 63rd minute, Van der Ven, could he have been sent off for denying a clear goal-scoring opportunity? I saw what you said on social media. He was booked for this. So I'm going to kick it off with you. We've seen, obviously, like instances like with Saliba where he was sent off. So Arsenal fans are going to be annoyed about that. It probably makes it a little bit better, you know, for a Spurs fan like myself. But what do you make of that? Do you think he was a lucky boy?
Well, firstly, I'm on board with the Arsenal wind-up. I can get on board with that. I think that for me, it's one of those. It's a tricky one. I think the ball is. I disagree with the point that the commentators made. That the ball was going to the corner flag. It wasn't really. It was kind of on the far side of the box. I think the pace that Ismaila Sarr has, you can argue that he could get a shot off, but then it's all if buts and maybes. I think the reality of it is that when the foul was made, there is a defender level. I think that, you know, it in the moment I was almost certain, as was my dad and my brother, surely this is a red. And then you see the replay and you're like, maybe, but you're still wanting it to be. I think it's just one of those where it could be, it couldn't be. I think, again, like you said, the Arsenal fans are going to be very upset because they'll see it as being similar to Saliba's. I don't think it is. I think Evan Nilsson, I think it was that was fouled. I think he's in on goal. I think Sarr still has to meet the ball and then come across goal to be able to get a shot off. So it's not a guaranteed goal scoring opportunity. It's one of those that could go either way. I think if he was sent off by the referee, who, just for what it's worth, I thought had an awful game for both sides. I think if he was sent off originally, I don't think VAR overturn it. But because it was a yellow, I also don't think VAR are going to step in and change that to a red.
No, I appreciate that, Henry. A balanced view, and I'm with you. I think it could have gone either way. And you know, I don't think I think Saliba was clear, and I know Arsenal fans don't like it, but I think that he's quite an obvious one, even for partly kind of my thoughts on Arsenal aside. I think that he was running on goal. This one, I don't think he's going towards the corner flag, but it's not quite as like nailed on one-on-one with the keeper. It probably still does happen, but not quite nailed on. But it's interesting to hear your kind of thoughts seeing that back. Travis, what are your thoughts? Should Van der Ven have been sent off for that in the 63rd minute? Did you see it? Where he was booked?
I think this all boils down to the inconsistency of VAR. You know, I think, you know, Saliba walked last week or whenever it was. And I think it is just purely the inconsistency of VAR. You know, it was soft, but was it a goal scoring opportunity? Probably. Should it have been a red? If VAR is consistent, yes, it should have been a red. But because VAR has completely destroyed the game with every single team and every single match, that's where the problem lies. And we're going to have this problem furthermore until they scrap VAR.
So you would get rid of it completely? You wouldn't change it? You just get rid of VAR today?
Just get rid of it. It's completely killed the game. Completely killed it.
That's interesting. Okay, thank you very much, Travis. Seb, you shook your head when I mentioned about Van der Ven and whether he should be sent off. Are you under the impression that the yellow card's the correct decision, not a goal-scoring opportunity?
No, I do agree with Henry, to be fair. It's one of those where if he got given a red, I probably wouldn't have had many complaints. I actually think it's like the nature of the foul. I think with Saliba's one, it was desperation. He had his hands over him, like properly bundled him over. I think
it's
with the
aggressive, yeah.
Yeah, I think with the Van der Ven one, it's almost like he's trying to skip past him. He does catch his legs, and obviously he does foul him. It is a blatant foul, but I don't think it was a sort of, I don't know. I'm just trying to make excuses for the yellow card, to be honest. I think, yeah, he did get lucky, but yeah, I also think, yeah, the ball was going slightly away from goal. I do still think it's probably a goal-scoring opportunity, but yeah, I think overall, if I was going to lean one way, I would probably say a yellow card was a little bit fairer.
Okay, that's really good to hear. And Billy, lastly, on this, do you agree with the guys that he could have been given either way, but probably a yellow card? Kind of, you know, maybe too many complaints either way. What do you reckon?
Yeah, 50-50. If it's your team, you want a yellow. If it's the other team, you want a red. So it's one of those ones.
Okay, appreciate all your honesty on
Harry,
that one.
can I just ask a question with who else thinks VAR should be scrapped? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Tell you what, we'll do it as I don't know, people can't see on podcast platforms, but hands up if you're for scrapping VAR today. If you could have the decision, it's a hard one. Billy and Travis have got their hands up. Seb, what you thinking? No hand up? You happy with VAR, or would you just make changes rather than scrap it?
You're only going by the game yesterday, Henry.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I think we're too deep in now. I think if you scrap VAR now, you create a whole other world of problems in terms of. I think the refereeing is so bad anyway. At least with VAR, sometimes they get the blatant stuff at least right. Sometimes I don't know. I mean, they don't, do they? There is so much inconsistency, and I completely understand why people want it scrapped. And obviously, going to games each week, like it is more authentic in the grounds. If you don't have that and that emotion that you sort of get rid of with VAR, half the time you're just waiting for them to check it and confirm it if you think it's offside. But yeah, I think we're too deep in now, and I think the problems that would be caused with not having it in terms of like those blatant offsides that used to not get given, etc., etc. I think you'd have just as many problems still with the refereeing. I think the problem is the refereeing standards in the country instead of actually VAR coming into the game. But I see both points of view.
I think going off that as well, I think I've got a feeling that referees have maybe become almost a little bit reliant on VAR as almost like a backstop to their performance. So I think the standard refereeing in the Premier League is atrocious. When I was at university in Lincoln, I worked at the club, went to most games. The standard refereeing there, awful. It's just so poor across the leagues. And I think the problem is with scrapping VAR completely is that the refs have gone from having that kind of backstop and that comfort that they might miss that. I'm not sure if I'm going to give that, but if it is, then VAR will check it, and I feel like that could really cause an issue. Maybe
Henry,
short term.
Do you not think that VAR is biased with different teams?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think if obviously as a fan of a smaller club, we've always thought that the referees are biased in general towards the bigger teams. I don't think that's. I feel like, but it's a really interesting thing because when you actually sit back and if you watch a neutral game, I think a lot of the time you kind of realise that everyone kind of gets a rough run of it. But I think it's just one of those things. Well, yeah, or Pat, but yeah, if you I think it's just one of those things, and I completely agree with Seb is that. It's far too. What is it? 3 seasons now. I think you're way too deep in it to just throw it away and kind of give up on it. I think you see it implemented really well across Europe. I watch a lot of La Liga and Serie A, and it's generally very well implemented. And there aren't the number of issues that there are here. Maybe that's just a problem with the English game, but for me, it's as Seb said, it's a refereeing problem more than a problem with the actual technology.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I think it's been a lot better this year, though, to be honest with you, in general, the way they've gone about it, not just VAR, more information in the stadium. First time I was in the stadium, the Tottenham Stadium, in that West Ham win. It was late, yes, but displayed on the screen, that information to fans. And I don't think we've seen any clear and blatant things being missed by VAR.
Do you actually find that beneficial, though, Harry? Because from my perspective so far this season, when the match centre tweet comes up on the screen, the only thing that the tweet does is say exactly what we all know that's happened. VAR checked, there was a coming together, the referee went to the screen, decided it was a foul. We all know that because we were watching the game.
Yeah, no, it could be done a different way, couldn't it? But I think the idea is right to inform the fans of what's happened. But also, I think this is an opportunity where they can, that quick apologies. Tottenham and Liverpool, for example, when we beat them and they blatantly got that thing with the Jota, the offside wrong. That's an example where that's where the apology should be, an explanation for the fans. And sometimes you just can't see what's going on. So it's something that the idea is good, but I agree with you, Henry. Maybe not quite executed yet in the right way. Billy, do you want to say something about VAR before we move on?
Yeah, my only reason is what Seb already said at the beginning, which is just the match day experience. It completely ruins it. You're sat in the stadium for 3 minutes, no clue what's really going on. On TV, they get a much better idea of what's happening. Stadium fans get nothing other than a tweet pop-ups maybe or something like that. And then, you can't really celebrate a goal at the moment. It's just, I'd rather go back to the product of being able to, really lose it in the moment of a goal being scored than maybe getting a couple more decisions. I think it's great that the decisions have generally got better. And you kind of lose that opposition. You lose that absolute howler from the referee. For example, the Pedro Mendes one, which we had years ago, where the ball was obviously over the line, but obviously that's goal line technology itself. But it's made a significant change to the match day experience for match going fans.
Do you think that if they had rugby style communication in the stadium, so if we could hear the referee speaking Because for me, I think that would make a world of difference.
Yeah.
I think if you could hear the referee communicating with his VAR, you know exactly why they're making a decision. You know exactly the angles that they're looking at. I just feel like that would be so much more beneficial, and that's how they should do it to execute it better for match-going fans.
I think a big problem is at the moment, because they know that they're kind of, whatever they're saying is not, I don't think there's any kind of conspiracy theories going on, like, you know, a certain fan base would have you believe, but I think sometimes they're too afraid to make the match official. They're too afraid to make the match official walk back on his decision because they don't want to make their colleague look bad or something like that. There's definitely a bit of disparity somewhere.
It's about accountability, isn't it? If you heard the communications, then they'd be held accountable for the decisions they're making, and that's the next step that has to happen for me. Is we've got to be able to hear the communication that happens between the refs and VAR. Otherwise, everyone is still left in the dark, even if we do, you know, get the stuff in the stadiums.
Most other sports in the world have it, so I don't understand what's the problem.
Even post-match interviews, why I never understood why we don't interview referees post-match and ask them about their decisions, and then they can just but do you not think that if a referee came out after the game, say after Palace Spurs, and said, okay, I didn't think it was a red card because from my perspective and from my angle, Sar's running wide, there's a defender covering, and objectively the foul, it was a coming together more than an aggressive foul. I think if refs came out and just held their hands up if they made a mistake, I got that one wrong, you know, I'll take that experience and make sure that I don't make that same mistake again going forward. I think fans would just be like, wow, okay, they're human, they make mistakes, but at least he's holding his hands up and is willing to learn from it, I guess.
The problem is it comes from Stockley Park, and that's one of the biggest problems. I think it comes from a completely different location, and I've said all along it should be an on-field matter.
Yeah, no, I completely agree where you're coming from. Thank you, all of you. It's really interesting to hear the whole VAR saga. A saga that never go away. We could have a whole show about VAR referees and what we could change. Billy, I know you have to jump now, so Billy's gone. He's jumped already. He might come back. I don't know. We'll move on though. Full time, it did end 1-0 Crystal Palace. Seb, did the best team win on the day for you?
Yeah, absolutely. They battered us from start to finish. Look, no disrespect to Crystal Palace, it was fairly embarrassing the way the game sort of transpired, especially how Palace have been playing. I've been keeping strong tabs on Palace this season. They are probably the team I have the biggest soft spot for after Spurs in the Prem. So, I think the lineup before the game worried me a little bit because I think Palace needed that width out wide, and they had that in Ismail Assar. Eze was playing off the left-hand side, drifting in field. I feel like that really helped them in terms of not having as much responsibility on their wing-backs. And I think that whole thing of playing at Selhurst Park, they had to win the game, really, Palace. From Glasner's point of view, they clearly, like Henry said, had a rocket up their arse after the Nottingham Forest game, and the fans were well up for it, and Spurs just folded into their shells. And I think it's a mentality issue for Spurs at the minute in terms of dealing with these atmospheres and these games and these occasions. And I don't really feel like the leadership in the team is still at the point it needs to be. I don't see Romero speaking much. I don't see Maddison speaking much. It's like we retreat into our shells in these hostile atmospheres. And Selhurst Park was
we will talk about the leadership. Yeah, we're going to talk about the leadership. That's an ongoing issue. But we'll stay with you because Henry mentioned it earlier. Should we have lost by more? I think we could have. I don't even think we were in that game. We could have lost that by even more, couldn't we, really, if Palace had taken their chances?
Yeah, there was a spell in the second half where Palace had about 3 or 4 pretty decent chances within like a 10-15 minute period. And at that point, you were thinking, honestly, just hold on and don't lose this game by 3 or 4 goals because that would be really, really embarrassing. And that is a pretty sad state of affairs to be in, to be perfectly honest with you, especially as this was an opportunity. Was it 6 out of our last 7 games or something like that? And we had that really disappointing Brighton loss bounce back against West Ham. But yeah, so poor on the day. But like I said, credit has to go to Crystal Palace because Oliver Glasner got the set-up spot on. I thought they were brilliant on the day. I think Henry and their fans can be really enthused by that performance going forward. And yeah, they've got some proper talent in that squad as well. So it was a good win for them.
Yeah, it was their first of the season. I think they might be able to push on now. Travis, do you think Ange got the lineup wrong today? And did you think we looked like leggy? Because I thought we looked really lackluster looking at that. And you can't really use the excuse of they just played on Thursday because the majority of players are rested going into this game. So what went wrong from a Spurs point of view, Travis?
I just don't think we could really be bothered, to be honest with you, Harry. I think we did lack a lot of motivation, a lot of energy. I think, and I think Seb has completely hit the nail on the head. That everything he's just said, I've just been nodding my head at, because he's absolutely spot on with the lack of leadership, and that's one of the biggest problems within our team. Nobody takes accountability, and nobody wants to lead that team. I think the only person who does have a bit of a shout up is probably Sonny, because he's just built that way. I think other than that, I think, as Seb just said, with a hostile atmosphere at Selhurst Park, Palace fans are incredible. I can't take that away from them. They're absolutely immense. And that's the thing. I think that's just where we lose our confidence. And I think we back down, and again, as Seb said, we just go into our shell and just completely disappear and just wait for the whistle at 90 minutes. That is always been a problem with Spurs. We've never had that final bit of confidence to try and push ourselves to the end to get a winning goal.
I agree, and I don't think we're good in a hostile environment. And I'm, we knew it would be, and St James's Park has been an issue. I think for exactly the same reason. We knew Palace needed that win; they'd make it difficult. Seb mentioned earlier, small, narrow pitches, little things like that. Fans get behind the team massively, and I felt like we weren't in the game. And kind of the last experience like that for me was Fulham away. My first away day at Craven Cottage last year, we lost 3-0. We're never really in the game. It felt like a kind of training match. I was going to say stroll in the park, but in the complete opposite way in terms of it just felt like we're having a kick around and just not really ever in the contest, which is a real shame. Went into this game as favourites, I think, to be totally honest with you, and to come out of it like that is quite bad. Next, I want to play clips from Vicario and Ange Postecoglou to get their thoughts kind of after the game, because I think it was really interesting. First, we will hear from Ange Postecoglou.
I'd be very surprised if they were happy, mate, yeah.
Because you're not happy, obviously.
Why would I be happy? Is there a question there? Why would I be happy about today or our supporters? So our supporters are unhappy, I'm unhappy, the players are unhappy. I think that's a fair assessment.
Only because I asked you if your level dropped below what you expected, and you didn't necessarily think that was the problem, so...
No, but I identified another problem, which was that we didn't battle today like they did. So I think if you're suggesting that our fans somehow weren't happy with today, then I think that's a fair assessment. I'm not happy, the players aren't happy.
Someone who's clearly not happy. Seb, what did you make of that from Ange Postecoglou? No messing around. Said what he thought. Wasn't keen on the question. What did you make of his assessment?
Yeah, he does get asked some dumb questions in post-match interviews. I've noticed that's sort of a bit of a trend. But yeah, he's spiky. Ange Postecoglou is spiky. He does, I think, in post-match interviews, sometimes he does let his frustration get the better of him sometimes. But to be honest with you, I don't mind it. I think you see that from a lot of top managers. I think, I'm not saying he's obviously a top manager yet or that he's on their level necessarily, but I don't really mind it from Ange Postecoglou. To be honest, I've never really paid much attention to what managers say after games. So I think obviously they get asked the same question pretty much after every game, win or loss. And I think they're always quite emotional about it. They don't really want to be there. They don't want to be really doing the interview. And I think I wouldn't really read too much into it, to be honest. He's done that a couple of times as Ange, been a bit spiky. But like I said, I don't really mind it.
I completely agree with you as well, Seb, about the questions. I think there's been multiple times this season where clips have gone viral of Ange, biting or nibbling or kind of throwing back to what have just been bizarre questions. Of course he's unhappy, and to kind of extend that and to point about the fans. I was looking before we got on tonight, and since Palace have been in the Premier League, since we got promoted to 2013-14 season, Palace have only won 3 games against Spurs. That's in almost 11 years, 11 full seasons. We've only won 3 games. Spurs beat Palace. That's just how it works. And I think, so obviously the fans are going to be disappointed. The players there's a few players there that have got multiple wins against Palace in their time at Spurs, And, I do completely agree that post-match press conferences with managers, it was one of the few times I watched Oliver Glasner's, but again, it's just the same questions. It's the same, of course we're happy, we needed to win. Did you feel pressure for your job? Yeah, but not really, because we've got a good relationship. It's boring. And I think Ange is kind of almost, because he's a bit of a spiky character, I feel like journalists do kind of just throw a little question out to try and get something from him and get a reaction. Yeah, and I like how he deals with it. He's just like, well, no, I'm not happy. Why would I be happy?
Yeah,
and I rate that.
I think the one thing you can never say about Ange, I mean, look, people are Ange out, whatever. But I think the one thing you can never level at him is that he's not passionate. He doesn't really care about losing or winning, because I mean, you can tell it really, really affects him when we lose. So I guess that's a positive from that point of view as well. And yeah, you're completely right. The journalists are always fishing for something because they know that sometimes he will give them something. But yeah, I think he gives as good as he gets, Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think he, should show that passion on the touchline? His critics would say, Seb, what do you make of that? His hands in the pockets all the time.
No, I do understand that. I do see where they're coming from. I think I would like Ange to be a bit more proactive sometimes in terms of his subs. I think against West Ham, it impressed me bringing on Sarr, and obviously that changed the game around. But I think, against Palace, I'd like to see a half-time sub just because of how awful that first half was. I don't really care about our manager bouncing up and down on the touchlines and stuff. We had that with Conte, and it doesn't really bother me, to be honest. But yeah, I get it. I mean, look, when we're losing and it sort of pans to Ange Postecoglou stood there on the sidelines with his hands in his pockets, looking like he's not really doing anything, looking like he's not being proactive. I can see how that would wind some people up in the heat at the moment, but it doesn't bother me because I know that Ange does want to win the football match and he's going to do everything in his power to do it. It's just, obviously you can have complaints about subs and all of that stuff, but I think that's a different question, really.
But then, like you say, sorry, Harry, but just quickly, would it make a difference if he was jumping up and down and you were still losing the game? I think the thing that football fans broadly misinterpret is that the time a manager spends on the touchline is 2% of their work, if that, probably less. He's done all of the pre-match prep in the midweek. He's done the team talk before the game. He's done the halftime team talk. He doesn't need to stand there shouting. Glasner doesn't do it. I do think it's just one of those things where if it's not going well for you, people just start picking up on really silly little things. And I think that, for me, Postecoglou having his hands in his pockets on the sideline is the least of your worries when you're losing it away to Palace. That's just my honest opinion on that.
Yeah, you're spot on about when we're losing, people are going to pick holes in everything, and everything suddenly becomes a problem. So I completely agree, mate.
Yeah, definitely the overreaction, if you like. Before we play Vicario's clip, Travis, you heard from Ange Postecoglou there. Do you think he got it wrong? Like that midfield balance? We saw it didn't work against West Ham, Maddison and Kulusevski. So do you think he got it wrong looking back?
I think, as I said earlier, I think, I don't know if Bentancur's got a knock at the moment, but I think he's the sort of player that should be playing every single game before Bissouma. Because, he pulls the strings, and he's just a player that has to start for many, many reasons. I think that's the only thing he got wrong there. But we could go all the way back and say he hasn't got a lot to play with. There's not a lot of, I know Mikey Moore's come into the first team now, but there's not a great ordeal there to really play with in regards to subs, and I think we've just been stuck in this rut for such a long time and just needed, a decent transfer window as such. And I don't know, I can't really, it's one of those sort of pinpoint things I can't really pinpoint because it's just been the same for so long. But as I say, I think Bentancur should just be starting every single game, without a shadow of a doubt. Other than that, I don't think he got it wrong. Fair play to the bloke for giving Mikey Moore, a first team, his first team run for 17 years old, and I can see exactly why he chose him because he's going to be an important player to come in the next couple of years, I think. But I think after when we lose, I think Ange just looks so deflated. He's come from the Scottish League where they would kick you up in the air, they'd tread you into the ground. A completely different league where people were fighting for challenges, fighting to be at the top of their leagues. And then you come to Tottenham and it's just I think he's just another manager that's going to become even more deflated than what he is now, unless we do something spectacular. And it's so frustrating to talk about because I feel like it's something we as Tottenham fans say every year in, year out, and it's something that just needs to drastically change.
I just want to throw some praise though towards Mikey Moore because I think for the Palace Way, the production company, if you like, that I write for Palace and work for them. I'm the academy reporter, so I watch a lot of academy football, and I know a lot about the academy players and what it's like transitioning to a first team. I think that is, I completely back the decision to start him. I think, he played really well against AZ, and I think he earned that. I think it just wasn't maybe the right game. I think, you're coming up against a team that needed to be very physical. And I think something that I noticed very early on was, I think Trevor Chalobah hit him very hard down the right wing with a big challenge. And I think just from that, he maybe just got a little bit put off. I think maybe he would have been better off, and he will be very good for you maybe in games where you're going to have a bit more possession and not when you're kind of in a dogfight, if you like. But I think you've got a superb young player on your hands. So I wouldn't panic. There's no rush. You've just got to let him naturally mature into first team Premier League football.
Henry, I completely agree with what you're saying there. But I think what frustrates me with Tottenham as well is we bought the likes of Archie Gray for 40 million from Leeds, right? And he's not had many minutes compared to what other players have had, and I think it's so demoralising to see, because Daniel Levy, we're going to spend 40 million on these players, but they're not getting the time, and I just think I find it just so mind-boggling that he can throw this money out there for players that have come from a different league, but then can't buy the players that we do need, and I don't understand it, and I'm sure other people will agree with me. I don't know, but it's stuff like that is so frustrating as a Tottenham fan.
Yeah, we will move on. I want to hear from Vicario. So he's the Tottenham goalkeeper.
Difficult afternoon for us.
Yeah, disappointed defeat today. We didn't expect this outcome today, but it is what it is, and every outcome has something to say, and has to say a big thing to us that maybe we didn't fight as we could fight today. And it's disappointing. We have to take it very personally. It tests your heart a lot, but fortunately in football we have another occasion in 2 days in a big game. So now we have to personally analyze this game and go forward, because in 2 days we will have another game.
I think he speaks really well, but taking personal responsibility. You talk about lacking leaders. I think that's really good to hear. Seb, what do you make of that little assessment from Vicario?
I thought it was strange that he was the one to come out, considering I wouldn't have put Vicario at all at fault for that loss. I think, he made a few brilliant saves actually to keep the score at only 1-0. And I think it was the 10 outfield players that were the ones who weren't showing that fight and weren't showing that character. We got, like I mentioned earlier about the leaders, James Maddison's our vice captain. Cuti Romero was the captain on the day. He's also our vice captain. Not coming out to the media after a game like that. I've never seen Romero come out to the media and talk after a game, especially how poor he's been for us this season. Obviously, I love Romero. Look, he's a brilliant centre-half, but this season so far, he's not been up to standard. It was a little bit disappointing for me that one of our outfield players, one of our leaders, didn't come out and sort of talk about it. Vicario was the one who had to do that. And I think, like you said, he spoke well. He was completely spot on. It was all about the fight in that game. And we were really lacking that. And I think Vicario speaks quite well every time I do watch him. But a bit disappointing for me that it was him that had to come out there, because I think there are a few different players who I'd definitely like to hear from.
Yeah, definitely. They hid away probably. Vicario probably one of the first to put his name forward to speak to the media. But Henry, I want to come to you. I want to know your man of the match for Crystal Palace. Because you spoke about it earlier, didn't we? You've been in every game so far this season. Now you've got the win. So who's your man of the match? And do you think you can push on now as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's hands down Maxence Lacroix. I think he was absolutely immense. I think he almost put in a Van de Ven style performance against Spurs, which I found interesting. It was kind of like when I've seen Van de Ven play exceptionally this season, that's how Lacroix played yesterday. I think he was just superb. His recovery pace is just astonishing. There were so many times where it looks like Spurs might be on for a counter-attack, and then suddenly he comes out of nowhere. I think it's really interesting. Obviously signing from Wolfsburg in Germany, he's kind of taken his time to kind of grow into the league, and he's now, I'd say, up to pace. And I think he was just flawless yesterday. I'd go as far to say 9.5 out of 10. I thought he was amazing. I think shout outs as well. I know I criticised him and his final ball progression in Daniel Munoz. He was brilliant. Obviously, he's such a hard-working defender. My criticism of him is that his crossing is very poor. And, you know, he obviously put the cross in that resulted in the goal, but there were also numerous moments where he's just smashed the ball into the crowd or had a chance to shoot and it's flown into the crowd again. I think going on, can we push on? Yeah, why not? I mean, we've got a cup game away against Villa on Wednesday night. Why not? I mean, obviously Villa are a great side and we don't do very well against Villa historically, not of recent times anyway. But, Villa are in the Champions League. They're competing at the top ends of the Premier League. They might see that as a game where they might just rest some players. I think we got Wolves away next and then Fulham. I think those are going to be two very decisive games not in terms of our end position in the table, but as in, okay, did this win really kick us on? And if we can pick up 6 points across those games, we could be looking at Palace that everyone's going to be thinking, oh, Palace might be an outside shout for Europe, which personally I never said. I think the outside perspective of that was insane after the end of last year. But I think Palace are the reality of being a Crystal Palace fan. Unfortunately, is that we are that 12th to maybe 9th at a push team, and that's probably where we'll finish again.
At least we were maybe not in the relegation zone in and around where you spent the first few games of the season, first 8-9 games. I want to move on to some stats surrounding Spurs. So firstly, the more negative stats. This calendar year, Spurs have only won 3 games on the road in the Premier League. That really struck me by surprise. We've lost 4 out of our first opening 9 games. It's also our worst start to a season in 20 years. 16 defeats now in 37 games. And after about 25% of the season, we're 10 points already away from the top and 9 points away from the relegation zone. So that's closer to the relegation zone rather than the top of the league. And we're only 2 points above Manchester United. Erik ten Hag was sacked today on Monday. And he also won 2 trophies in Man United, so maybe that increases the pressure a little bit on Postecoglou. Got Nuno's Premier League record here at Spurs. He's played 10 games, won 5, drew 0, lost 5. So it's about so it's a 50% win ratio. Angie's Premier League record this season, we played 9, so 1 less, won 4, drawn 1, lost 4. That's a 44% win record. However, more positive stats: 7 wins in 9 games. And just 4 points behind Chelsea, who are on fire, as we know. A lot of people bigging up Chelsea. And if we beat Villa, we go 2 points behind Arsenal. We play Newcastle this weekend. So, Seb, talk about a contrast in stats. It really depends, doesn't it? If you're a glass half empty, half full kind of person. Where do you sit right now with Ange?
I mean, I'm still definitely Ange Postecoglou in. I would hate to see him go, and I don't think he will do anytime soon. I think the most frustrating thing for me is the inconsistencies there. I think everybody can see the talent in the squad and how he can play. I think it's the inconsistencies that are the biggest problem with us so far, which I think his mentality is a big issue for us as well still. And I think, look, we're 18 months into a rebuild, and I think we can't keep sort of giving managers this length of time and then sacking him. Like, where do we go if we sack Ange Postecoglou? I mean, seriously, I think people wwho do want Ange out, I'd be interested to hear from them where they want to go after that and what sort of happens. I think, it's been a fairly mixed start to the season. I mean, I'm not happy with our starts to the season, to be perfectly honest with you. I know we have won 7 of our last 9 games, but a lot of them have been in the Europa League against sides that you would expect us to beat and stuff. But yeah, I'm still positive about the whole thing. Lots of things to iron out, though. Lots of things to improve upon from Ange's point of view. But I just think, projects can take 2, 3, 4 years, and I'd like to give Ange that time. And look, if we get to the end of the season and we're nowhere near the top 4 and we've been knocked out of every cup competition, then maybe there's a discussion to be had. But right now, I'm still fully behind him, to be honest with you. I still believe in him, and I still am hoping and believing that he can turn things around, because I think he can and I think he wants to. So, yeah, that's the key thing for me.
No, that's great to hear. Love that. I think definitely starting a project would be the wrong thing to do. But there's some statistics there that don't look great and some that do look really good. So it really does depend on how you look at it, negative or optimist, if you like. Travis, where do you stand with Ange Postecoglou? Are you still behind him? I know you talked a lot of doom and gloom today, but do you see this project worth sticking with, if you like?
I'm just trying to be realistic, Harry, as always. And I know I'm a bit to the point sometimes. But yeah, I completely agree with what Seb's saying. I absolutely adore Ange Postecoglou. I really do. I think the bloke is just absolutely immense, But again, as we said before, it doesn't matter what we say as fans. We have Daniel Levy in charge of our club. That is the biggest problem of it all. It doesn't matter what if Ange says, "Oh, I've got a project, so I want to get up to." It's going to take 3 years to do this painful rebuild, to win trophies, whatever. It doesn't matter because Daniel Levy is our chairman, and that will never change until Daniel Levy sells the club. And I'm sorry, but that is just my honest opinion. As Seb said, where do we go where do we go if we sack Ange? And there's so many Ange people out on Twitter, so many out. But I think you just got to give the man time. You got to look at the Arsenal rebuild. Look how long that took. It took ages. So the same's gonna happen with Spurs. He's got in the right players, I think, but it's something that's just going to take time to rebuild. And I think we just need to stick with him because I think he's the man to lead us to good things. How long that takes, I don't know. But the main problem is Daniel Levy is in charge of our club, and that is the biggest problem in our club at the moment. And I'm not just saying that because there's so many Enoch out people, Levy out people. That is the main problem in our club.
I think what you say about like a lot of the problems we're seeing again into this rebuild is the same we saw under Conte, Mourinho at the end under Pochettino. And it's like these are issues that have been at Spurs longer than Ange Postecoglou has, and like you say, comes from the ownership, it comes from the top of the club, comes from the mentality, it comes from having that pressure of not having won something for that long a period of time. And I think to pin all of that on Ange Postecoglou, the mentality of the squad at times, the mentality of the club at times, to sort of accept top four and accept that that's good enough, etc., etc. I think it goes so far beyond Ange Postecoglou, and I think his mentality is a lot better than the one that we've had at Spurs for a long, long time, and how
100%.
his will to win things. So yeah, I completely agree with Travis. I'm so behind Ange Postecoglou, and I think it'd be a bit of a travesty if he was to be sacked, and I could not go for another manager hunt and all that again. So yeah.
Does it increase the pressure on him though, with Ten Hag being sacked? Just a little bit.
No, because there's a vast difference between Ange Postecoglou and Eric Ten Hag. Yep. Massive, vast difference.
And you'd rather Ange, I assume.
Yeah, because his vision that he's got for the club, what he wants to do for the club. What's the point in keep turning Tottenham Hotspur Football Club into a manager's graveyard? Because that is what we are well known for. Where do we go if we get one? Who do we get? Who is the right manager for us? And two, let's start the painful rebuild again and then do the same thing in 3-4 years' time, whatever it may be. That is the problem. We need to stick with one manager, Ange Postecoglou, and work with him rather than against him. But unfortunately, Daniel Levy likes to work against people than work with them.
I do think as well, when you say there's a difference between Eric Ten Hag and Ange Postecoglou, there's also a massive difference between Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur. Massive. I mean, United are almost basically a kind of upper mid-table side at the minute that are still stuck in the mindset that they should be winning trophies and battling for league titles, and that's why they're sacking managers when they're going on, lost runs or conceding a late penalty to a really awful VAR call. I think you're all spot on. Look at, as much as you guys are obviously not going to be enjoying it, you look at Arsenal and think, they were kind of in a similar sort of position when Arteta came in, and that's been 5 or so years now. Exactly. And now look at them, and now they're pushing on, and it's all clicked. You need to back the manager. He is the super manager.
Henry, that's the thing. They get the backing. They've had the backing.
Yeah, and I understand that you're saying that it's a kind of a hierarchical issue with you, and I completely understand that. But I also completely agree with what both of you have said. Is this who'd you get? United have now, apparently looking at getting Ruben Amorim in from Sporting. What's to say that Ruben Amorim wants to leave Sporting? They're having a great season. I think it's a lot easier to say,
spot on,
get Postecoglou out, and that's the issue, and we'll fix it. But that's so short-sighted. And, I feel if you actually sit back, and for me, from a neutral perspective, Spurs are growing. It is working. The project is working. Yeah, it's slow progress, but you are becoming a better team, and it's going to happen, and it will click at some point, whether that's this season or next, or maybe the season after. But you haven't given a manager a good shot in a long time. So why not just back him, give him a chance, man? You never know what's going to happen.
I also think with the Ten Hag comparison, it's like, Manchester United have picked up a lot of points this season they probably didn't deserve to pick up. And I think the Crystal Palace game was probably the first game that I looked at from a Spurs point of view this season and thought, we got played off the park. We didn't deserve anything out of that game. I think the Newcastle game at St James's Park, obviously the Brighton collapse was a bit different because that was just a complete shit show in the second half. But the Newcastle game, I thought we deserved something out of that game, etc., etc. I think the performances have been there for the majority of the season for Spurs. I think we have been unlucky in some sort of games. I think the mentality at different points has cost us. But yeah, I think the Crystal Palace game was a real sort of wake-up call and probably the most worrying performance of the season. But yeah, in terms of the Ten Hag comparisons, I think it's night and day between him and Ange Postecoglou, stylistically, performance-wise, and the tools that he's had at his disposal.
Okay, no, fair enough. Just play devil's advocate, by the way. I'm still fully behind Ange, and I don't think the comparison is fair. But I've seen some people make it, so I want to get your guys' thoughts on it. But before we move on to our next game, which is Manchester City, and obviously Palace's next game as well. You mentioned Henry in the Cup against Aston Villa, both midweek coming up. I want to discuss an individual, and it is Romero. And Travis, I'll kick it off with you actually, because some people have been worried about Romero's start to the season. So I want to know, are you worried? And should he be dropped? Should we entertain the thought of him being dropped? Radji Dragusin on the bench?
We can't afford to drop him. I don't think he's been great to start this season, but because of the options we've got on the bench, we can't afford to drop him, and that's the biggest problem. I don't think Dragusin has been given enough minutes to drop him and then start playing, like dropping Romero and then start playing Dragusin more. And I think that's the biggest problem. I think we bring these players in and we don't see a lot of them. I think Archie Gray being one of them. You can't afford to drop Romero. I can't see it happening. One, because of the options, and two, because when he does have a good game, he has an absolute blinder. So yeah, no, I wouldn't drop him.
Also, he wasn't costly against us. It wasn't Romero. It wasn't, for me, it wasn't really a defensive issue. It was more the complete overwhelming nature of Palace's press, and that was more impactful for me on your midfield. I thought Maddison had a really poor game, and that in large parts was down to Wharton's press and how much just getting blocks on the long passes. So I also think that as you've both said, and all of you have said, Romero is a brilliant centre half, and I feel like you don't drop that sort of personality. I feel like he has the kind of character and the bite to kind of get you through tough moments.
Yeah,
it didn't work on Sunday, but that's not to say it won't work midweek against City or next weekend.
Spot on. Yeah.
No, absolutely. He's a top defender, which is interesting to get some people's thoughts on it. Seb, what do you think as well? Do you think he lacks leadership? Romero obviously is in that vice captain's role, but yeah, I completely agree with you that leadership is an issue. I think we lacked that in that game. Who do you kind of turn to and point fingers for that? I mean, Maddison, Romero, they're kind of the vice captains. Romero had the armband in this game in particular.
Yeah, that's the area of Romero's game that really needs to grow for me in terms of that leadership, leading that back four, stepping up in those big moments. But I think he's got easy enough credit in the bank, Romero. He's not getting dropped. I think he's our best player last season, in my opinion. I think, he has had some shade. I think at the start of the season, especially, he was quite poor. But you've also got to remember with Romero, I mean, I think I saw a stat where he travelled the furthest amount of distance of any player in Europe last season. And he goes to South America constantly. He was at the Copa America, played every single game, won the Copa America this summer, barely got a pre-season. I don't think he played a minute for us in pre-season, came straight back into the Premier League fold with barely any rest. And I think with Romero, I think there is a bit of fatigue there. I think there is that leadership thing, the sort of responsibility that comes with that. And I just think he is the sort of player where he could have an absolutely monstrous game against City. And I do think Travis is right as well. Who do you turn to? Dragusin? I think Dragusin's made some errors this season. I'm not overly confident in him. I don't think we've got sufficient depth in that sort of left-sided centre-half role as well, and the left-back role. I mean, when you're looking at the players we could bring in to replace somebody like even a Mickey van der Ven or an Udogie, if you're looking at defensive issues, you've got Jed Spence. He's not a natural left-back. You've got Ben Davies, who, let's be honest, not good enough start for me in the Premier League anymore, even though I do like him and he's been a good servant to the club. So, yeah, I do think you can't drop Romero. I do think he's got a lot to work on in his game. I think he's fatigued as well at the moment. I think, he's going to be travelling off to Argentina again in November, so it's not really going to ease up, is it? And that's a problem for me.
Okay, no, that's really interesting to hear. Thank you very much. Next, we'll move on to our next game because that's a good thing, I suppose, of playing so many games, being in Europe and fast approaching that Christmas period, as you can put it behind you and focus on the next one. It's Manchester City in the Carabao Cup on Wednesday. First, I want to get the thoughts of a City fan. So this is Josh from the City Shack. I'm going to play the clip that he sent to me.
Hi guys, Josh from the City Shack here, just to preview the Carabao Cup game between Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester City on Wednesday night. City and Tottenham synonymous with cup games. We know in the past some absolute bangers, but I don't think this one will be one from a Manchester City point of view anyway. I think Pep's already alluded to the fact that there will be quite a lot of first team players rested. I think we'll see a lot of youth players come in. I think Haaland, for example, will be rested. Obviously no Doku, no Walker, no De Bruyne, no Rodri. So I'm not looking forward to the game, to be honest. But it might be a good chance for ourselves to see some youth players come in as a City fan. But I think Tottenham will be looking forward to the game a lot more than we will. I think they'll probably take advantage. I can see this being one for Tottenham that they probably go all out in and try and get that bit of silverware. I think this season Tottenham will be really, really happy to win that Carabao Cup. For us, I think as City fans, this is one of those things where you're kind of hoping to get easier draws at this part of the season. Once you get into those latter stages, you can start playing more first-team regulars. But, I mean, Tottenham away, as every City fan knows, it's horrible at the best of times. It's always one of them ones that, for me personally, do not look forward to it whatsoever. But, yeah, I think we have to give you a prediction now. I don't think I can ever really predict City to lose, but I'm going to have to go with a loss on this one.
Now, it's interesting to hear City fan going for a loss, talking about the academy as well being used, which Pep has been really clear in the week. He wants to waste no energy on the Carabao Cup. He's going to bring the academy, bring the second team to Tottenham. So, Seb, what were your thoughts on that from Josh? Obviously not too worried about the Carabao Cup. So this is an opportunity for Spurs, isn't it, really?
Yeah, 100%. It's nice to hear that City fans scared of us. I'm not sure he should be too scared, to be honest. And I mean, he's talking about rotation there, but they've got the best squad in the Premier League. In terms of that rotation, who's going to be coming in? It's going to be Phil Foden. It's going to be Jack Grealish on the left. It's going to be Savinho. They're still going to have the quality to hurt us. I'm looking forward to the game. I'm going to the game on Wednesday. I think it's going to be... I'm not sure how the atmosphere is going to be, to be perfectly honest. It might be a bit flat after the weekend, but I'm hoping it's decent. I'm hoping we can get behind the boys and sort of make it a tough place for City to come. And I think, yeah, if we go full strength, I think Sonny will be back. I think he was rested at the weekend for the game. Hopefully Odebear's back as well. Richarlison will probably start, which I don't mind. So I'm fairly confident for the game. I think, City's style as well, they might have a little bit more of the ball. We might be able to sort of, I mean, we never really sit in, do we? But maybe sit a little bit deeper and sort of be a bit more compact in that game. It's a cup game Wednesday night. So, yeah, I actually think it's going to be really interesting to see what Ange Postecoglou goes with in terms of a lineup. I'm not sure how much he's going to rotate, if he's going to rotate at all. But, yeah, we've got a couple of tough games this week, Villa at the weekend as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what he goes with, definitely.
Yeah, will be. Thank you. And a massive thanks to Josh from the City Shack for sending in his pretty much thoughts. Really interesting to get that opposition fan perspective, something we'll be doing more on the channel and podcasts in weeks to come. Travis, question to you. Here's where it gets interesting. If you had to choose top four or a trophy, if you could only choose one, obviously it could be neither for all we know, but if you could choose one, I mean, 16 years without any trophy, do we have to prioritise this game for you over the Premier League?
Yeah, massively. It'd be a trophy for me, 100%. I think, our start to the Premier League this year has not been very good, to be honest. So I think, a trophy would be wonderful, given that obviously we haven't had anything for the last 16 years. I think regardless of what Pep puts out Wednesday night City-wise, I think we've got to go all out with an all-out attack and a strong starting 11. And just don't take them for granted, because in the day they are Manchester City, and I think whatever team they play, they're going to have an immediate threat straight away. I mean, you've only got to look at the likes of when he plays Oscar Bob and people like that. As Seb said, you're still going to have the likes of Jack Grealish, Phil Foden. So yeah, I think whatever team they play, whether they drop players or not, they're still going to have that threat there to beat us. I just think we just need to be at them from the get go, really. And just hopefully get some silverware this year. I would absolutely take that over, top four.
Is there any football fan that would take top four over a trophy at this point? I can't imagine.
I think
I'd
you'd be surprised.
Relegated if Palace won the FA Cup.
Yeah, literally.
Without question.
I finished 17th if Spurs won the cup. Yeah.
100%.
If we can get if we can get Europe this year and the Carabao Cup or something like that, I'm not really too fussed where we finish in the Premier League.
Exactly.
I think it's I've just had a look as well. I think obviously City are a great team, but I've just had a look and Spurs have won 6 of the last 15 matchups against City, and 5 of those were Premier League games. So those are the games where City are not playing a weaker squad and are trying to win. So if anything, Spurs City is a pretty much a toss of a coin. And I think if it is a weaker squad, this is a great chance for you to really bounce back from such disappointment at the weekend and prepare.
So you think we should prioritise it over like Villa at the weekend, for example, in the Premier League?
For me, it's not even a matter of prioritising it. It's more, if you can use it as more of a springboard and kind of regain that positive feeling around the club. And then, you've got a tough game against Villa, but if you get a good win against City and you're able to, maybe if you're a goal or two up at some point, you're able to take some players off, then you put yourselves in a great position to go to Villa. And is the game home or away? I'm not sure, but you're in a great position to go into that game and get a result. And again, like I've said about Palace, you win on Wednesday and then you beat Villa and then suddenly everything's rosy again and there's nobody's complaining.
If we get knocked out of the cup tomorrow, then I think that would be a lot more of a depressing result than the Crystal Palace one was even. So I just think, in terms of looking at our chance for trophies this season, I'll probably, to be honest, say Europa League's maybe our best chance at a trophy, and then the Carabao Cup. And obviously, if we get knocked out of one of them, then it can just create a spiral sometimes with Spurs, and especially how desperate we are for silverware now. That is such a massive game for us tomorrow.
There will be.
I think what we need is a Palace v Spurs EFL Cup final. I think that would be brilliant, wouldn't it?
We will be,
Two teams that are just not meant to win trophies by the looks of it.
No.
Somehow ends in a draw.
Yeah, somehow. I don't know how. But no, there will definitely be uproar, won't there, if we get knocked out. And I think rightly so, 16 years without a trophy. And the only reason I say prioritise that, I think about players being rested, when do you kind of do that? And we talk about Mikey Moore starting. I think Ipswich had been a better game to do that at home, where you're going to have more possession, like Henry said. But no, it's interesting because some people obviously would choose top four. For me, it has to be a trophy. I think you kill 2 birds with one stone with the Europa League, because you win it, you get qualified for the Champions League. But there's more games in the European format. Carabao Cup's definitely the quickest route to win the trophy. Travis, lineup for you. How strong would you go? We talked about priorities. What would be your lineup? Any changes?
Can I just add before I do my starting lineup? My governor at work, he's actually got a screensaver on his computer at work of how many days it's been since Tottenham Hotspur won a trophy. And every time I go into work, I have to sit there looking at it. So, I think... we need to do it to get rid of that. I wouldn't.
Yeah, definitely.
I wouldn't start the. I wouldn't change the starting 11 apart from starting Rodrigo Bentancur and taking Bissouma off. I think Bissouma's always good to come on as a sub anyway. But I think I'd still keep Solanke over Richarlison. I don't think Richarlison was that good even against AZ. I know he got his penalty, and fair play to obviously Maddison, given the confidence boost that he massively needed. For many reasons. But I'd keep Solanke. I think Solanke's work rate is absolutely incredible. As I say, but. And if I would change, take Bissouma off and absolutely keep Bentancur in that starting midfield. I would actually drop Maddison as well, to be honest with you, and I'd put Sarr or Kulusevski in there.
Yeah, okay, that's really interesting. I think I'm with you on that. I'd put Bentancur in for Basuma. I'd put Sarr in for Maddison. The only thing I would change is I'm hoping Son is fit and to come for me straight back in that left-hand side. Nothing against Moore, but his age as well. You've got to be careful. He's played a lot of minutes, and I think introducing him from the bench could be better. If he's not, hopefully Odebear, or it wouldn't be the end of the world at all starting Mikey Moore, but I'd certainly make a few changes in there to make sure that we play the strongest lineup to face Man City. Those changes will be made to have the best possible chance of beating City, not for rotation purposes. I think we have other opportunities against Ipswich to do that, or if we find a way to beat Galatasaray, should be through. We can do that against Roma in the right way. So Seb, lineup, how strong? We talked about priorities, how important this game is. Would you go all guns blazing?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I'm so glad I've also found someone else who rates Bentancur over Bissouma. I got absolute pelters the other week when I tweeted Bentancur is still our best midfielder when he's fully fit and playing well.
He is. He absolutely is.
Yeah,
the power of Twitter, Seb. Honestly, I have to turn it off sometimes. There's some absolute loonies on there, if you ask me.
Say no more.
I completely agree. I think Bissouma, I've been just disappointed with Bissouma, to be honest, since the start of last season. We all know what the talent he's got, but it doesn't show on a consistent enough basis for me. And I love Rodrigo Bentancur as well. If you're going to play Bentancur, I think playing a Pat Matasar in there next to him, I definitely think would help him. I think that's the lineup I'll go with tomorrow. I think I'll go Bentancur, Sarr, Kulusevski. And then I think, Sonny comes straight back in for me. If not Sonny, probably Odebear if he's fully fit. To be fair, I do think I'll probably still play Solanke as well. I think Richarlison probably isn't quite match fit still yet. I think he's still probably got maximum 60, 70 minutes in him. And then, on the right-hand side, probably Brennan Johnson as well. I might even go Odebear on the right and Sonny on the left if Odebear's fit enough. I don't think Brennan Johnson offered much against Crystal Palace, but against City, I think he'll have more space to run in behind. So maybe, I'd go full strength. I would go full strength.
Another thing is Kulusevski done really well on the right last season against Man City. It's something that's worked for him against that team in particular. So for this game, do you just return to that position? I think he's so much better in the middle, but just maybe another thing to consider if we're not got the options on either side. But we'll get on to score predictions for Tottenham versus Man City in the Cup. Henry, you're going to kick it off with you as a Palace fan before we get to your game. How do you see this one going? Obviously, it's quite a big game for a neutral.
Yeah, can you just remind me where the game's been played?
The game's at home for Spurs at the Tottenham Stadium.
Okay. I'll probably tune in for it, to be honest. But I think, especially after talking to all of you, I now want Spurs to do well for some reason. But I think, looking at recent results and especially, I just really feel like you need a reaction to the weekend. I think that kind of has to come, especially if City play a weak team. For me, like if they're playing, the likes of O'Reilly and some of their other proper academy youngsters, it's got to be a Spurs win. I would say I'll go 3-1 Spurs.
Oof, lovely.
3-1. There you go. I bet you didn't
absolutely love it. Yeah, absolutely. Let's kick it off. We're a bit more positive though. Travis, I'll come to you because I don't think for a minute that positivity is going to last. What's your score prediction? Come on, prove me wrong.
I'm going 2-0 Spurs.
Oh, he's done it. Thank you, Henry. You've got the positivity out of him. I've been trying all year. Thank you very much for that. Now, score prediction for Travis, 2-0 Spurs. Loving this. Seb, what are you going for?
Yeah, difficult. I'll echo that. I'll go 2-1 Spurs. I do think we do them. I bloody hope we do because 2 losses in a row would not be ideal. But I think if City go weaker, I never buy what Pep Guardiola says though. By the way, that bloke waffles a lot in press conferences, and then he'll probably play Haaland.
It's all mind games as well.
Yeah, Rodri's ACL will be magically fixed for Wednesday somehow. But yeah, I think I think I'll go 2-1 Spurs, especially if City are weaker.
Oh, I'm loving this positivity now. Yeah, well, I'll go for Spurs win as well. You've all gone for wins. I actually thought we'd lose this, but I'm not going to break the trend, if you like. I'm going to go 2-1 Spurs as well. I think that's a good prediction. I'm loving that. Henry, I'll come to you before we wrap up, because your game, from Crystal Palace point of view, is Aston Villa. I think it's a tough game, as you mentioned earlier. What's your score prediction for this one? I mean, we talk about you pushing on as well in the Premier League. There's a big couple of games coming up. I mean, that one against Wolves in particular is massive, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're completely right. I think Wolves is. I think a lot of neutrals that teams that aren't playing, because obviously it's the late kickoff as well. I think that's going to have a lot of eyes on it because there's a lot riding on it. I think looking closer to Wednesday night, I think it's one of these. Glasner is typically a cup manager. Obviously, won the Europa League with Eintracht, and he always plays full strength in the cup. I remember, even against QPR, we didn't play very well, and we won 2-1 in the previous round. But it was a very strong team. I think it will be close to full strength, maybe the same lineup, bar Wharton. I'd imagine it will be Hugh starting instead.
Sorry, mate. Can I just ask you a question? Mateus França, what on earth is happening with him? I loved him last season, and then he just disappeared.
Yeah, so and that kind of comes into a lot of some of the injury issues we've been having. More longer term players, he's been very unfortunate. He had, I think, a groin injury that was pretty bad and reoccurring. And then I'm not going to name names. A lot of Palace fans seem to think it's Rob Holding. I have no idea, but he had his rib broken in training. He was about 2 weeks off coming back and had a rib break. So he's been out again. So yeah,
is he near coming back or not?
As far as I'm aware, he's not going to be playing until 2025. No, unfortunately. Wow. But it's a massive shame because he's such a the very small doses of Mateus França that we've had have been very positive ones, and it's just one of those where I feel like, as ridiculous as it was at the time and how many jokes have been made, you don't put a Ballon d'Or clause into a contract if the player is up.
He looked really good. He looked really good in the first few games under Glasner when he was coming off the bench, and it seemed like Glasner actually fancied him a bit because Hodgson didn't really give him much. I remember that game where he got an assist and won a penalty, and I was thinking,
Burnley at home. Yeah, I think that Hodgson was for some reason very openly critical of the young players and maybe their lack of maturity. I remember him being critical of Wharton at times and thinking, I don't really understand what this is about. But I think it's a shame that he's injured because I think there is a very talented young player. He just really hasn't had the chance to hit the ground running. He hasn't had a run of games at all, and it's a shame because I think now under Glasner in the cups where he takes it seriously, but there is a chance to see players like França playing if he wasn't injured. I think. We've got a youngster who came on against Forest called Ashraf Benone.
Yeah, he looked good.
He's phenomenal. I'm a massive fan of his. He's superb in the Premier League too. And if he could get some minutes against Villa, that would be brilliant. I think I'm going to be more conservative with my prediction than I was for Spurs. I just don't know how Villa take cup competitions. I don't know how seriously Emre takes them. You just don't know. They might see that as a great chance for a trophy. If they play a weaker side and we play a strong side, we could edge it maybe 2-1. But for me, if I'm being realistic, it's probably reverse of that score, 2-1 to Villa.
Okay, no, that's interesting to hear. Thank you very much. I think that wraps us up nicely for this episode of the podcast. Thank you to the full panel. Thank you to Billie T earlier who had to leave. Seb, thank you very much for coming on. Where can people find you across social media?
TikTok mainly, YouTube as well. Seb On Football. Yeah, thanks for having me on, mate. I appreciate it.
No, thank you very much. It's great to have you back on. Travis, thank you again. I did say it has been a while, but it's always nice to have you on. Where can people find you?
Yeah, it has been a while. Yes, thoroughly enjoyed tonight, and pleasure to meet you, Seb, and Henry as well. You've always got brilliant guests on here anyway. Harry, I can't give you any bad comments about that. It's always good fun. You can find me on Twitter at @officialcaster. I'm on Instagram and I am also on TikTok as well, but there's no point in going on my TikTok because there's nothing on there yet. apart from a video of me and my Sergio Tacchini tracksuit, but other than that, there's nothing on there. But yeah, I am mostly on Twitter.
Oh, lovely. Now, I have to follow your TikTok. You have to tell me after. I have to drop it a follow.
I've actually made it for my little girl who's now 10 weeks old. So.
Oh, how lovely. Oh, I'll have a look at that. No, thank you very much for coming on. Henry, thank you very much. Really solid debut from you. Really good to get your thoughts. So good luck for the rest of the season. Where can people find you across social media for people who may be interested in the Palace content and just the wider Premier League content?
Yeah, so a lot of my work can be found out the Palace way. We broke some big stories over the summer transfer window, so we're quite a small and young team of journalists, and was just really proud to be able to represent them on this show. I think it's over. So my personal Twitter is just @Henry Swain Journ. I am also on TikTok. The only video I've got is a day in the lifestyle vlog that I did when I was in the press box at Selhurst. I want to get into more content like that. I just working full time. I don't really have the time. But honestly, I've absolutely loved tonight. It's been great to meet all of you, and it's been I found it really interesting actually to kind of sit and talk to some Spurs fans or just generally fans of a different club and really understand their thoughts on their own team. So thanks for having me on. I've loved it.
No, it's always fun and interesting. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you to everyone who listened, who watched. It will be available on wherever you get your podcast platforms after. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave us a 5-star review if you enjoyed the episode, if you are listening on the podcast platform. But for now, a massive come on you Spurs. Keep the faith.